Do you feel safe in your schools right now?
In my school, Ward Melville, I do feel safe because we have a great team of security guards who are not armed. I don't think I would feel as safe if they were armed.
I don't always feel safe in school, and I think that's terrible. And I don't think we should live in a society where there's a constant threat of going to school in the morning and not knowing if you're going to make it home in the afternoon.
What makes you not feel safe at school?
As great as our security is, they are unarmed. And an unarmed security guard against an armed attacker is a recipe for disaster. It's never going to end well.
From the perspective of an administrator, I think it's our role to try to ease some of the tensions that students have. Students have to feel welcome, they have to feel safe, they have to feel that you can come to either an administrator, a counselor, a teacher.
Marissa, as a teacher, when you come to work every day, do you feel safe?
Yes, I do.
Do you think students feel safe?
I think that students feel safe to an extent. I also think that they get scared, just like we do. Just the fact that our district is proactive and is constantly trying to make our students, faculty, everybody feel more safe. Students are heard, teachers are heard, community members are heard, and I think that that helps us feel safe.
If you were to ask people of Parkland and people of Sandy Hook if they felt safe in their schools the day before those horrible events happened, they'd probably say yes. Currently, right now, I feel safe, but it's always a feeling that any moment that could drastically change for the worse.
I think we should also be careful to include preventative measures, that is, empowering the students and the staff to identify individuals that might be isolated or at risk and get them the help that they need.
The children themselves know who the problem children are. They're the ones that have to come forward to speak up to an administrator or to a school teacher. They know there's a problem coming. They see who have violent tendencies. So the biggest trick to really keep children safe is children.
To say the students have a responsibility, which I believe we all do, to speak up. You see something, you say something, of course. But we shouldn't be seen as the key to this school safety thing. The students at Parkland, on numerous occasions, reported that this child, Nicholas Cruz, was a problem. Everybody in the school knew it. But we still had the tragedy occur.
His name should have been put on a list months before. He would have never been able to even buy the firearm. Not that that would have stopped him, but it would have been one way he couldn't have done it. The FBI, the police, the local sheriff's department, and the teachers, they all knew they had a troubled child. And none of them did what they were supposed to do.
What are some of the solutions that schools should be looking at?
In terms of looking at it proactively, trying to identify from a very early age students that are showing warning signs, students that have anger management issues, students that come from dysfunctional homes.
How do you do that?
You do that by outreach. You do that by getting your staff involved with the families of your community.
Matthew, how do you feel about that? Let's say you came from a troubled home, you come to school, your counselor calls you in and says, I'm going to have to do a home visit.
I don't know. I can't relate to that situation because that's not something that's directly affected me, but I can tell you this much. If students don't get the help they need and the help they deserve, that's how catastrophe happens. And we live in a society right now where we don't want to address mental health. We don't want to address issues that students have internally. We want to blame outside things for those issues.
As a student, you feel very shamed upon if you go to get help. It's not like a very good environment, especially around other students, to say, oh, I have a problem, I'm going to go get help with an adult.
They have to be a place in school or in the community where that child can go to get help or seek help. Just like she said, some children feel embarrassed. Well, if I go see the psychiatrist in school, they're going to think I'm nuts or crazy. I'm not going there.
We sort of demonize people with mental health. If you're a victim of mental health, you're far more likely to be the victim of a crime than perpetrator of it. We often have experience where we only talk about mental health after mass shootings. And mental health is absolutely an issue, but there are steps that we have to take along with mental health to fix this crisis that we're facing in our country.
Some people, the immediate response is, well, we got to ban guns. Guns didn't cause the problem. If I took a firearm right now and put it on that table in front of all these people, I don't think any one of them would suddenly change their personality, their attitude, and become evil.
What if there are guns already in the house? You've got a problem child, we've identified them. Mm-hmm. The school's doing everything it can. It's got its outreach program coming out. It's going to your home, and you say, no, I'm a Second Amendment pro-gun person, and my gun stays in the kitchen.
My gun stays where I believe it's appropriate to be safe.
So how do we solve the problem? That's my question.
You can't. In the case that you're bringing up, absolutely you can't.
If you had a problem child in your house and you're a responsible gun owner, that child would never see my gun, would never get near a gun.
Keep in mind that everything that we're talking about when it comes to schools, my children go to the same schools, my grandchildren now go to the same schools. We're just as much horrified about all of this as everybody else.
Why are there so many mass shootings in the United States?
Because our children play these games that kill all day long. They sit there on his computers and all you see is them shooting, blowing heads off and blowing up cars and burning down buildings. Do that 8 hours a day and see what it does to your mind as a young person.
I'm going to take a wild guess here. You come from a generation that saw Elmer Fudd, Tom and Jerry, all of that. They killed each other every single episode. Never once did you think to take an axe and swing it at your friend, though, did you? No. And I'm not going to do the same when I play Call of Duty today or tomorrow.
If you have a person who's not stable, a little bit off kilter, and he starts playing these games, you know what? You become desensitized.
How come that doesn't happen in the UK? They play the same video games. How come it doesn't happen in Canada? How come it doesn't happen in Europe? Not on the same scale that we have it.
Other like developed countries don't have this problem because they quite frankly don't have access to guns. I mean, you will not go into a public place with a knife and kill as many people as you will with an AR-15. That just makes sense.
Does anybody know what AR-15 is? It's a semi-automatic firearm, which means you can only shoot the firearm by each pull of the trigger. That's not a machine gun. It's not an assault weapon.
Why are we allowing people to own an AR-15, which is unbelievably easy to obtain? It's only $700, and you can kill a vast number of people. Why are we allowing them to have it?
How many actually do it who own AR-15s?
Too many. One is too many.
Exactly. But how do you stop the crazy from doing that? If I took my cane and beat somebody to death with it, it would be just as dead and just as dangerous.
I think that there are certain guns that should not fall in the hands of civilians. I think that there are certain guns that should only be law enforcement officers, military, things like that.
In October, 50 people went to a concert and were slaughtered. For no reason, but they were slaughtered. And we stopped talking about that 2 weeks afterwards. There's no way that could be true, and also we can say that we have a okay culture around guns. If we want to get to the bottom of the issue, we can't look at people who are mentally ill. We can't even look at other countries. We have to look at ourselves and ask, why is there gun violence, and why am I okay with it existing?
Should we have armed guards? I know that you're in favor of this.
The security personnel who are retired police officers or active police officers trained in mass shootings and have drills a couple of times a year. But teachers should not be armed. Absolutely not. Administrators should not be armed. The teacher is a teacher, not a cop.
But if you have a school where you have some people who are willing to do it, everybody knows this teacher. If she has the training necessary in a firearm, she can be the one thing that you can go to saying, I know her, I know where she's going, I trust her.
There are plenty of statistics that show that armed guards do tend to target, maybe not on purpose, but target minorities, including African Americans and Hispanic students.
I know for a fact from my experience at Center, our SROs have great relationships with the students. We see them walk in full uniform. Their weapon is not concealed. It's out in the open. We all see it. No one's quivering in fear. Everyone's in support of them, and everyone has a great relationship with them.
I have experienced bias from security guards within my school. My sisters experienced it within the schools. If myself, as a black student, do not feel safe because I see a figure who is holding a gun, are we going to then do like diversity training to make sure these officers who are coming into school have no bias whatsoever?
I feel safe, but I want to make sure that every single person at ward level feels exactly the same way. And unless we can do that, we shouldn't have armed guards.
I can't imagine a security officer going to pick on a student because he's black and let a white kid go.
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it. Let me assure you right now, I have seen it.
That's a terrible thing.
Yes, that's the thing. It's not just in schools. It's everywhere. That is, we have very serious race relationship problems in our country. We need to address those. Absolutely.
When I go to school, I don't want to feel like I'm in jail. I don't want to have an oppressive environment where people are checking me all the time, making sure that I don't have any weapons on me. In an environment like that, it is psychologically draining, it's mentally draining.
At some point, you have to make a stand as a district, as a community, as to Casey's point, not wanting to feel the sense of imprisonment versus the true safety of your students and staff that we're entrusted to keep safe.
I believe that the armed guards are there to help you and not to hurt you. And I understand some people may not like it, but tough, that's what we need to keep our schools safe.
Are student movements like the #NeverAgain and the Enough making a difference in changing gun control laws or keeping guns, more importantly, out of the hands of the mentally ill? I'll start with you, Julio.
If the Parkland kids, Ebba Gonzalez, David Hoggs, all of them simply cried and were upset that their friends died and did nothing about it, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We got millions of people in Washington, D.C. under this hashtag. It garners conversations like this amongst us kids and you adults who will, can, and have to find a solution.
I am very supportive of my students having a voice, being knowledgeable, and fighting for what they believe in. However, for me, safety-wise, having students walk out of the building to a place where I can't control anything is very terrifying.
I walked out on the 24th. We did know the consequences and we knew that it wasn't necessarily the safest thing in the world, but that's kind of the risk we had to take, because when you do these things, you don't do it for safety and just to get some press. You do it because you're trying to make a stance.
I can appreciate you doing what you're doing, because that's what you believe in. But instead of walking out of a school day and losing a day of education, why don't you have a rally at your school on a Saturday? Come in Saturday and Sunday, put a rally out.
People do get mad you leaving school. Like, if I did it on a Saturday, it would not have got as much press. People wouldn't care because they're like, oh, it's just kids fooling around on a Saturday.
A convenient protest that doesn't disrupt anyone isn't a protest. I think that it already has gotten success. In Florida, they passed a law saying that you have to be above 21 in order to purchase a long gun. A law that was passed in a Republican state legislature, Republican state senate, by a Republican governor, Rick Scott. That's already a success.
We provided students at Center Riches with a safe alternative in the auditorium where we did a great thing. We made that poster for Parkland. It was brought down to them. Pictures were taken. They saw it, and we directly communicated with them. We had 3 students in the high school who chose not to participate in that and to walk out instead. That shows that students are more than willing to go for a safe alternative and still get their voices heard, still make that stance.
Do you think the NRA plays a role in the issue of gun safety regulation and laws, and do you blame the NRA in any way?
I don't blame individual members of the NRA or any responsible gun owners, but I do understand that 97% of Americans agree that there should be criminal background checks for every gun sale. Yet, that is not the law of the land. And why? The NRA.
We're not the ones causing you the problem. We're the ones standing right alongside of you looking for a solution because we don't want to bear the burden of that somehow I'm responsible for some idiot doing the wrong thing at the wrong time.
The majority of these attacks are not perpetrated by people who have been raised with guns, who've been brought up around guns, and who are trained and properly know how to handle a firearm. These are people who get them illegally, and even if they do get them legally, they don't have the proper training.
In the last, let's say, 3 decades, the NRA has sort of shifted its rhetoric towards, watch out everyone, they're coming for your guns, and you got to defend yourself at all costs, and I think it's extremely dangerous.
If you're going to take away a constitutional right from me, I want to know why, and it better be a damn good reason.
Doesn't the NRA use that rhetoric to scare people?
Of course they do. They would be foolish not to. I don't want to lose my rights because somebody else misunderstood.
We're not trying to take
what
away
the
your
person
Let me assure you, I have no
said.
interest in taking away your guns.
Gun reform, many people think that it means taking away all guns, and 99% of people who are pro-gun reform do not want to take away guns. We want to make the age limit 21, make sure that deadly weapons like an AR-15 do not get into the hands of American civilians, and we want to make sure that there are better background checks on criminals.
If you're going to propose the law, why didn't it aim at criminal? Why is it aimed at everybody who owns a gun? You want to punish me before I've even done
I
it?
don't
It's
want
not
to
a
punish
punishment.
you.
Laws aren't punishment. We don't pass laws in order
Then
to
why
punish
are you putting it out so that every legitimate, lawful person...
If we had a perfect list of every single person who would use a gun maliciously, we would target those specific people. Unfortunately, we don't. I'm not going to hijack a plane. I still have to take my shoes off at the TSA. There are very basic things that we can do as public safety because we don't have a perfect list of everyone who commits a crime.
I do think that there are a lot of things that the NRA is pushing that is trying to undo progress. A lot of it is because there is this perception that if you talk about gun reform, guns are going to be taken away. So I think that both sides have had some good representations and some poor representations.